At the 2012 Game Developers Conference in San Francisco, game designer Richard Lemarchand, known for his work on the Uncharted series, gave a talk on immersion. Immersion, said Lemarchand, is a term that should be replaced, as it makes no literal sense. He asked the audience of gathered game developers what we are under or within when we say that a game is immersive, or when we say that we are experiencing a sense of immersion. He wondered, are we inside the gameplay or the graphics, like James Woods making out with his creepy TV in David Cronenberg's film Videodrome? Lemarchand expressed skepticism that even when fully immersed, a person could ever forget who they are, and in the process become someone else. However, he also conceded that certain types of experiences, particularly those described as providing overwhelming sensory inundation, could change or impact our identity in interesting ways. He gave two examples of this process: Sleep No More, the interactive theatre production by Punch Drunk, and Gaspar Noé's 2009 film Enter the Void. Sleep No More's interactive theatre plays with the boundaries between experiencing media and experiencing real experience, as it involves the audience inhabiting the same space as the performers with only the flimsiest fourth wall separating the audience from the theatre players. In a pair of blog posts about the experience, game designer Robert Yang, famous for his work on the Radiator series of Half-Life 2 mods, said that Sleep No More conditions you to react to certain stimuli and memories as part of the show, but then it blurs the line between show and not show, resulting in this unique cognitive dissonance when you finally descend. With only immersion as our frame, we end up making appealing but ultimately meaningless statements like, Sleep No More is immersive because it blurs the lines between show and not show. We could swap immersion for any other adjective: engaging, fun, exciting, demanding, excruciating, and each of these would actually change the meaning of the statement. Immersion is vague and meaningless and ends up adding very little, if anything, to discussions. How would we even measure how immersed we are? Are there degrees or gradations? And if so, is immersion about my own sensory experience, or is it about the properties of the media object and its ability to drag me kicking and screaming into the experience? If it's the former, then why would anyone find Enter the Void, with its clever use of perspective, more immersive than, say, James Cameron's Avatar in 3D, which has the benefit of a whole extra dimension to deliver total sensory inundation? Does it all come down to the utterly personal and arbitrary, subjective preference? Why then talk about immersion at all, if it's so subjective and so variable between individuals? But if immersion has anything at all to do with the properties of the media object, brought into some sort of relation to a real, live human being, then we already have a name for this. When media prove irresistible to us, we simply say it grabs our attention. Attention is a far more useful term because it's one used by scientists and psychologists alike, and it allows us to say lots of far more interesting and specific things about games, and what they do to us, do with us, and why. Take Activision Blizzard's internationally popular real-time strategy game StarCraft 2. In StarCraft, like many real-time strategy games, the prioritization of attention quickly becomes a decisive factor in who wins and who loses. In the first season of the 2012 Global StarCraft League, one player in particular was lauded by the English commentators and press for using an aggressive style of play that overwhelmed his opponents through superior multitasking ability. The Korean player known as Gumiho, real name Byung-jae Ko, used multiple Terran dropships to attack in many places at once, stealing attention and undermining his opponent's ability to focus on other more important areas of the game.
Ling spotted. A lesser StarCraft player may have not noticed that blip, but I think DRG would. But here's a drop now. This will not get it. No way in hell.
But all the units are over there. Now this other drop is coming in, Tasteless.
Drop
into
number
the natural.
2. He's doing what Gumiho does best.
Gumiho just dropping everywhere at once. Can DRG keep up?
What does immersion let us say about Gumiho's style of play? Gumiho was more immersed than his opponents, so he won. This statement is meaningless, but with attention as our frame, we can say that Gumiho's aggressive, drop-heavy style meant that he knew where and when he needed to pay attention and played accordingly. Attention in StarCraft 2 is not just applicable at the highest of skill levels. I've lost count of the number of times I've been playing a game with my StarCraft 2 partner who, at some point, asked me, "How could you not see that?" To which I reply, "I just wasn't paying attention." My lack of skill at directing attention to important areas of the StarCraft 2 screen, the minimap, the mineral and gas counter, and the supply count, is demonstrably detrimental to my play. I also want to make a connection between attention and the content of games. In the 1980s, Rachel and Stephen Kaplan wrote a book called The Experience of Nature, A Psychological Perspective, in which they suggested that our ability to concentrate and maintain attention on single tasks, which rapidly diminishes as we spend time concentrating, can be restored by spending time surrounded by nature. In the years since, a body of literature has emerged that validates this claim. Most recently, a study published in a 2009 issue of the International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health inquired as to whether visual contact with nature impacts on health and well-being. The paper's authors found that attention fatigue may be ameliorated by adding elements of nature to the environment, for example by creating parks, by offering a view through windows, and by having potted plants. Two of my favourite games capitalize on this phenomenon. Crysis from 2007 and Far Cry 2 from 2008, two games that share a common lineage as spiritual and actual sequels to 2004's Far Cry, both feature beautifully detailed simulations of the natural environment and bloody, split-second firearm combat that demands great attention. Both also feature extended periods of downtime spent surrounded by lush jungles and crackling savannas that serve to restore the player's ability to pay concentrated attention. The 2011 sequel to Crysis changed its setting to the urban jungle of New York City, losing much of its appeal for me. I found spending time within its world a much less enjoyable experience as a result of the lack of restorative foliage. As a term for a vague, subjective experience, immersion is ready to be jettisoned from our collective lexicon. As a term for the sticky and compelling results of the coming together of media object and human participant, we already have a meaningful and descriptive term, in the form of attention.